Gunny is a friend of Jason's Levon character. I think Gunny might call him Levon, but Gunny is a guy who's been on several, sort of teams with him and has served with him and on various tours. So they're military buddies. They're sort of brothers in arms. And I think in the story, Gunny functions in several different ways, but the biggest way that he functions, I think, is a mirror to Levon's limitations. And I think that, in the scene we talk about him wanting permission to do things, but I think also Gunny's been a product of Levon's failure to a certain degree, his blindness. He's blind because Levon wasn't able to save him from being hit with this thing. And I think he reminds him constantly of his sort of vulnerability and his limitations as a man. I think that's part of the reason for the character there, is to check him and to tell him that he's not immortal and that he's not perfect and there is collateral damage to his actions. I just really like Jason Statham movies, so I wanted to do one of those before I die. And then the other thing was I wanted to do another David Ayer movie because we've worked together in the past twice. I did a movie called End of Watch with him, and I did a little bit in Suicide Squad as well. And David and I have known each other for the years, and I think he's a really great writer, director, and has a very specific point of view and a very specific, deep flavor take on the world. And, it's nice to dip into that. He's been very gracious. It's always interesting to meet big stars and see what they're really like behind the curtain. And I think he's pretty much as he appears. He seems pretty, grounded and real, and yet has a certain vulnerability, which I find admirable for somebody who makes action movies. But I sort of think, I was like, maybe that's the reason why we like watching Jason Statham movies, because he's just very human and very engaged in a way that I really like. And he's really game to play around. I mean, we've been trying to deconstruct the scenes, and that's David's big thing, is he likes to go in and really pick them apart and see what's really important or what's vital to the story, to the character, what he wants to reveal. And Jason wants to get in there as well and wants to play around and dig around for some of the depths, and so that's been a lot of fun. I really enjoy being around him off set, off camera, and I enjoy working with him on camera. I think he's a real searcher, David. Like, I think he's really searching always to try to deepen and he's not precious, which I really like, but he really wants collaboration. He really wants the actors to bring things. He wants the prop guys to bring things, the lighting. I mean, he really wants other people to enliven this world. And, as I say, that can sometimes be rare with writer-directors, but I really like that. So it's always a bit of an adventure with him. It's an odd thing, like being an instrument in a band. Like, I don't necessarily know that me understanding the meaning of the song makes me a better guitarist. Like, I sort of feel like the chords that I have to play sometimes are based on story dynamics as opposed to the actual histories of something. And my relationship to a military situation is not going to be a military guy's relationship to a military situation. So a lot of times I'm having to work with my own internal metaphors around stuff as opposed to actual content. But sometimes it's useful to have just the language of the world. Like, it's been useful. We've been having good military advisors on this to talk us through, a lot of the language of the weaponry or the teams these guys were on, or how they work together, or why they work together. And what to me is most important is not always the content of that research, but more to see the fire that it ignites in another person when they speak about it. And so that's always very valuable, to see what draws people. Like, I know nothing about cooking, but when I watch a chef talk about what sour tastes like, it gives me a real clear indication of how to play a chef. And I think that this movie, you have to sort of do that this way as well. It's you got to play with like metaphors around that. But I do, I do some research. But I find that as I go on, stories are really personal things, and I think the more personal your work is on anything, the better you are. My character sort of enters early in the movie and then kind of finishes the movie as well. And so we're starting very early when Levon comes here to try to figure out whether or not he's going to be able to accomplish the task, and sort of view me as this mirror, as said, to his limitations, and to see if it's, if he's able to let go of some of the guilt of what's happened between us, to be able to be called to action. And then we're also shooting the end where he comes back, and we sort of wonder if he's ever gonna be rid of this drama in his life. So we've been shooting that. We're out in this cabin, this beautiful cabin. It's like a fire pit, and there's some lovely woods and stuff. The production value is amazing. It's a pain in the ass to get here, which is always great for production value. But it's beautiful, and we're sort of trying to carve out like what this brotherhood is between these guys, and trying to find that.
Levon, who's left a lot of his past in the past, and he used to be in the Royal Marines, and he was a bad mother flower. And David Ayer seems to do movies about people like that, and he's got a particular skill set. Like, if you ever really know any of those guys, I'm like, they're like superhuman. They're like the real heroes, man. Some guys will go on a 3-day mission and all they need is water and bullets, and he's one of these guys. And Jason's a perfect dude to play with somebody like this. I play his boss. I run like a family business, and he's part of the family, and we treat him like one. And he's kind of an outcast, and we bring those people in, and he seems like part of the family. Something happens to my daughter; she gets abducted. Obviously, we're freaking out, just like any other parent would, and we beg him if he can please help us out, because we know, he takes care of people around the trailer and the work site, and he handles little squabbles with efficiency, and we see it, and I try to pretend like I don't see anything. But someone, he's a badass, and with his type of skill, like, he can hunt people down. And my dad was a career Green Beret in the movie, so I'm like, I can tell somebody who has that skill set from a mile away, and he definitely does, and so we ask him for his help. This crazy, dark world, that we live in, where this thing is almost normalized of being trafficked, and, there's a big business to it, and, this movie kind of shows some of that, and it's kind of weird when it's just, like, normalized the way it is. My daughter is a bit of a badass as well. She's not just sitting around taking it, She's contributing to the motion of escape, and I like that. It's not just, she's not just there waiting and being a rag doll or whatever. She's being active about it. I gotta be honest, man. I'm like, I've worked with David a bunch of times, and he's I got a connection with that guy, and I was like, if I had the time, I just wanted to work with the guy anyway, and then, he wouldn't call me for just nothing, so I read the script, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's a short schedule for me, but it's a tough one. It's a bunch of scenes that are just, heart-wrenching. You come home, and you're exhausted, and then, it's the thing that you got to just think about and think about and think about, and a lot of prep has to go into it, and but he knows me pretty well, and sometimes he just keeps the camera rolling, and hopefully something happens, I just love working with the dude, it's my third movie with him. Could have been a couple more, and it's, he's just such a great writer, and also, like, Sylvester Stallone wrote this script. Like, you got to be kidding me. I'm a big fan of his. He's a pretty good screenwriter. Especially Levon, the way it's written, I don't know, you kind of just care about a person like that. You don't want to leave him behind. You want to give him what he doesn't have, in a family, and that's kind of our way of operating, anyway. Like, I got the entire family working in the office. It's a makeshift office here, and that's kind of the Garcia vibe. And it's what's cool about it is that it's very Latin, man. It's the vibe. Like, we shot a scene here on Monday, and it was like it was. I mean, that's kind of the way it is, to be honest with you. I mean, if you go to David's house, especially when we're shooting End of Watch, I'm like, it was exactly like this. I was like, you know, Grandma lives here. I'm like, damn, dude. I'm like, you know, it's always eating. Shit, dude. Like, you ate all the time, so that's real deal. I remember coming back to Chicago. That's exactly what, you know, my mom said. Is like, I need food. And I was like, no, I'm trying to stay shredded. And she's like, no, you need to eat. And it's just the subtlety and the vibe, you know. It's cool because I'm like, not a lot of people write that stuff. So, you know, you're always really appreciative when someone does. It's cool that it keeps it so, like, simple, you know what I mean? It's kind of what you want, you know what I mean? You want that brooding. He's perfect for this part, you know, like, just you be you, you know, and do your thing. Like, he doesn't overcomplicate it, which is really cool, and it's really easy to act with. He's very supportive. He understands David, which I think is a big, you know, it's a big plus. You know, you gotta know the dude, and you know, the beekeeper's pretty badass, and so it's, you know, it's awesome. I've been watching him for a long time, so it's kind of cool. Now to see this come about, you know, the next generation, and just like selfishly as a Latino, like seeing a you know, a young Latino like come up and have this opportunity is just amazing. And she's awesome. She wants to learn. You know, she really cares about the story. She, you know, she sees what David wants with other actors, and sometimes you got to fill your mind full of a lot of dark stuff in order for you to get there. But you know, she's gonna have a hell of a first teacher.
Jenny, I think on the surface, is an overachiever. She does really well in school. She does really well in sports. She's articulate and knows what she wants out of life, and she's gonna get it. Underneath that, she's very sensitive and trying to navigate where she fits in the world. Is she the friend? Is she the daughter? Is she the protector? Is she the fighter? And I think throughout the story, she's just kind of redefining herself and trying to let go of the standards that she feels are being held. And she's driven by a love for family. She's really close with her parents. So my first conversation with David was actually in stunts. I was it was my first day in stunts, so it was complete out of my element. I was sweaty and gross, and we're punching and kicking, and he just pops his head out. And it was my first time meeting him in person, so I go over there, and he says, "Hi, how are you?" But he kind of just got right into it. He's like, "So, here's the game plan for Jenny," and he was just so passionate and excited about how he wants to kind of shift the female portrayal in action movies, and like, Jenny is not going to go down easy. I want her to just bring this power, and kind of just his overall vision for the movie as a whole, but specifically Jenny. And yeah, it was his first interaction. It was brief, chaotic, but yeah, he was very passionate from the get-go, which kind of lit a flame in me. I remember reading the script and seeing her lines and just thinking, wow, I want to be her friend. I'm also mildly scared of her. And it was incredibly refreshing. She's portrayed in ways that are kind of just completely unconventional. She's messy and unafraid of getting dirty and being chaotic. And I think she goes between being defeated by what's going on. So she's not entirely just a one-note warrior. She's soft in places where she's like, do I surrender or do I fight? Jenny comes into the story right at the beginning. Levon is trying to get out of his life of chaos, and his boss's daughter Jenny goes missing. And she is this, to me, she comes into the story as almost a reflection of Levon in some way, in a different body, they're kind of telling a similar story, just in parallel plots. I think from the get-go, Jenny sees Levon as this teddy bear with a hard exterior, and I think she has fun trying to like crack it open. She sees him in just his kind of same outfits, same demeanor. He never cracks a smile too much, and I think to her it's intriguing because she sees that there's a lot to him, and so I see it as almost a big brother, younger sister dynamic, and I think they later come to find that they have a lot more in common than they thought. Working with Jason has been, I mean, he's Jason Statham. He's his own genre. He comes in, he choreographs his stuff. He's inspiring. He's really inspiring to work with. David's approach is really unique in the sense where he captures everything in an essence. He'll come up to you and just ask this question that kind of leaves you just reeling, but he captures you in that thought process, and then he rolls the cameras. And I think that's what's so unique about him, where you don't have to think or intellectualize anything he says, you just have to feel what he says. And it gives you this freedom, and he's never too nitpicky about anything. He wants to give all of us as much freedom to create as possible. So in that sense, he's really unique. He's for the actor, I think I would say.
Me and Jay have been mates for years, and we see each other every week, and there's been, our careers are very different. Well, obviously we met on Lock, Stock, and we did Snatch together, and then we did Transporter 2, and we've done, I can just see him, he's outside, and we've done a load of different silly films together. But for the last sort of decade, we've not really managed to do anything together. And then there was a part in Expendables, and that didn't happen because I was doing something, or the producers didn't approve, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So this has been like the third or fourth project recently in the last 4 or 5 years that had been a possibility of us working together again. And it's fun, you know, I mean, that's the honest truth about it, is that it's just fun working with Jay. And he's busy, you know, so it means I can spend a bit of time. He suggested it to David, he's a producer on it, so he suggested me to David. David then had a look at me, and he was like, I'd like to see him do, you know, the Russian accent, and I'd like to see him do, you know, like scenes with Statham. So I sent him Transporter 2, where I'm a Russian gangster and Jason's trying to kill me, and we showed him that. And then we did, David's interesting, because we did like we worked together on the scenes. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then, once I've been cast, he does this amazing thing, which I haven't seen in years, where he puts a table in a horseshoe and had 30 members of the cast, and then created different scenarios, not in the script, but just different scenarios. And it was really cool because it was so sort of like even-keeled, you know, like an actor who only had 2 lines in the whole piece got to do this like 15-minute improvisation, and then felt integral and important and part of the company. Really smart, really, really clever directing. He's doing it because he loves doing what he does, and he's great at it. And he did a job with David Ayer before doing The Beekeeper. It worked brilliantly. The relationship's great. Jay respects David and sees that he's he can get a performance out of Statham that maybe some directors couldn't. So it seems to be a very amenable kind of partnership, and it works really well. And I've worked for a lot of directors, but I would say David, you know, I've only been directed by a handful of directors in that time, you know. Usually it's just faster, slower, quicker, do it again. And David's much more cerebral than that, and yet not cerebral at all. He's very instinctive, but he's one of the handful of people that's ever directed me. So I've really loved that. It's been a great experience, and I'd jump at the chance working with him again. Wallow comes into the story because his son, Dimmy, is involved in nefarious, ugly, low-grade, low-rent crime that my family has managed to rise out of on their leaving of Russia and arrival in America. They've got a much better class of criminals. And Dimmy, because I think he's a bit of a junkie and he likes a bird, he's still very much involved in that side of things. So that's why his actions, like a magnet, bring trouble. And what follows trouble is Levon and Statham.
Having worked with Jason already. We really liked that relationship. I think we had great chemistry together, and it was obvious that we needed to do another film to kind of take things a little bit further, I think, in the director-actor relationship. And the perfect vehicle for that ended up being Working Man, which is based on a Chuck Dixon novel called Levin's Trade. And it's the novel's a little bit different. I think there's something that happens between film and novels, and it's an interesting journey to the screen. Sly Stallone did the first pass on the script based on the novel. That sort of came my way, and inside of that story, I saw something that was really interesting to me. I saw the genesis of this idea of, you know, kind of the war-torn anti-hero finding a new life, finding new opportunity, and creating a surrogate family, and then coming to the rescue of that family. I just saw it as the perfect vehicle for Jason. There's something very real and very blue-collar about him. And the idea of seeing him in a construction environment and playing a construction supervisor seemed like an incredible way to ground him in our world. And I feel like that's where he excels as a character, is the more you can put him into our real lives, our real worlds, he really shines in that way. There's something just so kind of a guy next door. He could be your uncle, he could be your brother, he could be your father. And then creating this family around him was, I think, really the key to the adaptation. As we started to create the world around Jason, you know, that idea of family was incredibly important. And there's an actor I've worked with who I trust and who's just incredibly capable, and that's Michael Peña. I did End of Watch with him, I did Fury with him, and he has such range and verisimilitude. There's something very natural about him, even though he's incredibly cerebral as an actor and incredibly hardworking and incredibly focused. I knew I could count on him to be the father of this family and to find these levels. And then playing his partner is Noemi Gonzalez, who's just a fantastic character actor. Just such a strong presence and so believable and natural. They make an incredible team. And then importantly, part of that family is Jenny. And that's newcomer Arianna Rivas, who's really someone I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of. And she's somebody that is playing a character that is really an alpha, is really this young woman on this discovery of who she is, and she's on her own journey and trying to navigate these very strong-willed parents. And there's a lot of love and a lot of fun, but a lot of intensity because you know, dad's a real estate developer in Chicago. It's a family office. Mom's there, so she's a little bit under their thumb. And then Jason just fits right in. He feels like, you know, the adopted kid in a way, and he's surrounded with this love. And he's kind of the guy that, you know, doesn't smile much and isn't the hugger, but this family pulls so much love out of him. It was the perfect chemistry. Working with Jason is interesting. He's very prepared. I've never had him ever show up and not know his lines and not know the scene and not understand the scene. He's all about the prep. And so much of him in the acting space, I think, comes from him in the action space, in the martial arts space, in the athletic space, where he sees it as a training event. And he shows up incredibly prepared. And what's great about our relationship is he trusts me to throw him the curveballs. He trusts me to lead him in a direction that maybe he wasn't expecting. And, you know, it's common that I'll write lines on set from behind the camera and throw them at him. And he gets it. He understands it. He knows what I'm doing instinctively, and then he takes it and makes it his. And that's my favorite part of the process is that live quality where you take what is a really good scene and working solidly, and then he'll show up with his heart and trust me to show his heart. And I really feel this is absolutely one of the best performances I've seen from Jason. And he's so natural and so believable and really accessible in a way that maybe we haven't seen before. In Working Man, it's about the action. I'm going to be honest. It's an action movie that delivers in that action space for sure. But the previous collaboration, Beekeeper, had a very different action style. And it was these large set piece scenes and multiple attackers and incredible complexity, but also a bit fun and a bit, heightened. And every movie has its own action grammar. And for Working Man, it really became about finding that balance between truth and believability, action style. He's playing a former British Marine commando and someone who is an incredibly trained soldier at the highest level. And so how do they fight? How do they use weapons? How do they move? And so that was something a lot of work went into, is finding that language, that body language, that action language for Jason that made sense for the world we're building around him. And I felt like we achieved the right balance between incredible action set pieces that have really dynamic movement, but also a nod to the truth of combat action. Jason's journey in the movie is pretty interesting. It's a bit of a classic reluctant hero. And, often in films we have what's called the inciting incident, which is really a character reveal. And in this case, it was some tough guy showing up to extort one of his foremen who he cares about. He's a great leader. He really cares about this extended family at the construction site. He's a good boss, and he cares. And so when one of his people gets threatened, he has to turn on the thing he's been trying to keep off for a long time. And that's that violence, that military violence, that calculated, tough, hard-charging aspect. And it sort of becomes one of the dominoes that sets up his entire journey, because it really tells the audience who he is and what he's capable of, but it also reminds him of who he is and what he's capable of. And that knock on the door, eventually he has to answer. I think one of the fun and scary aspects of A Working Man is this idea of the ecology of bad guys. And as Levon, Jason's character, goes through the world, he's experiencing these different layers and these different levels, and they ratchet up. They ratchet up in capability. They ratchet up in power, and he ends up going against the Russian mob itself. And after doing then some damage, they have to bring in some real hitters. They bring in the A-team. And so I always say that the greater the villain, the greater the hero, the greater the accomplishment in defeating that villain. And it's also important to have bad guys we love to hate and bad guys that look cool doing it. So I think we get all of that. And it's a true testament to this character that Jason's playing, that he can go against guys like this, and he knows what to do. And he always has the answer, no matter how difficult a problem they present him. So some time ago, I had the fortune of working with David Harbour in End of Watch, and he's just gone on to do absolutely spectacular things. He's always been just an incredible actor, and what I love about him is there's a realism and a gravitas and a presence he has. And in this film, he plays the role of Gunny, who is somebody Jason had worked with downrange in Afghanistan during the War on Terror, during the invasion of Afghanistan. And that sort of close combat relationship creates a brotherhood. It creates deep bonds. And Gunny becomes a bit of his sounding board. And we get this incredible history. And it's a difficult character, I think, for any actor to play, because there's such specificity to these military people, to people who've experienced this level of combat, of stress, of tension, of training. And there's almost a very particular personality they have. And as I like to say, you know it when you see it. And David absolutely nailed it, absolutely felt like one of the guys, felt like the real deal. And that's a testament to who he is as an actor. And he really brought that side of the movie to life. And seeing him and Jason act in these scenes was a real treat for me as a director. So one of the interesting Russian characters in that wild menagerie is Jason Flemyng, who plays Volodymyr, who's a Russian mafia captain. Jason Flemyng has an interesting backstory in that he's done work in Moscow. He's worked in Russian film. He knows the culture. He speaks Russian. So to have such an incredible actor who has that background and ability, and not only that, he's great friends with Jason Statham. They actually, off camera, spent a lot of time together. And so what that allowed was a challenging playfulness that you don't normally get, a chemistry that you don't normally see. And one of my favorite scenes in the film is there's a poolside chat, which gets a little heavy at the end. And just filming that was an incredible pleasure, and seeing how they supported each other as actors. And Jason Flemyng plays such a strong, powerful, interesting, colorful character. He really brings that aspect to life in a way that I didn't expect. Gynecology is Viper and Artemis. Magnificently played by Eve Mauro and Emmett Scanlan, who are both incredibly powerful, strong character actors. And they're both very nice people. So please don't watch the film and think badly of them. They're acting. But that's how amazing they play that role. I think Eve is riveting to watch. There's something going on with her character. And she comes from an understanding of, I think, the criminal world, the underworld, knows that world in a way that a lot of actors don't. So she's able to bring a truth. And really, no matter where anybody is in life, no matter what places they find themselves in, everybody's a human being. Everybody has a human heart. And so to the character of Artemis, she brings a depth and a liveliness and a playfulness you may not normally see from that kind of character. And Emmett is just absolutely a joy to work with. He's an incredible actor, incredibly brave. And I pushed him to a lot of tough places, and he plays a really difficult to play character, yet is really compelling and really riveting to watch. And them as a team, as a duo, they're formidable, they're scary, and we love to hate them. So part of Jason's world, he's in a bitter custody dispute for his daughter, Mary. And Mary's played by Ayer, who is an astounding young actor, an incredibly gifted actor. And to see this young person go toe-to-toe with Jason Statham and, maybe even steal some of the scenes. I mean, she's incredibly real, incredibly grounded, and brings something out of Jason that I really haven't seen on camera before. And it was a lot of fun shooting those scenes, and she could throw him curveballs. She could make him laugh. We'd call cut because he just cracks up. She'd crack up the whole crew. And there's a lot of fun and a lot of spirit in her. But most importantly, there's a lot of truth and awareness and wisdom in this young person. And her story allows us to get more into Jason's heart as a father and as somebody who would come to the rescue of this surrogate family when their daughter is in danger. Part of Gunny's role in the film is he becomes Jason's weapons sommelier, and he provides him with a bespoke, curated selection of artisanal weapons that he can choose from to complete his mission. It's a fun scene, and I think for people who know weapons well, there's something there for them. And for the people that maybe aren't that into it, they can learn a lot and have some fun with it. So for me, one of the most challenging and interesting kind of action scenes to film is what I call the phone booth fight, which is where you have a fight, an action sequence in a very contained space. And in this case, it's the back of an electrician's van once he's kind of captured and wrangled by the Russian mafia. And it's really about using the environment as a weapon itself and how he's able to move through the environment and everything that happens and the tools he's able to use and find in that space. And ultimately, he's able to defeat these guys, but I think there may be moments where we're not so sure that's going to happen. One thing about Jason's character in A Working Man is everything becomes a weapon. So be careful. He's going to use whatever he can find in the environment. a bucket of nails can become a great way to go against somebody with a gun. So can a pickaxe. A bag of cement can become a weapon when used the right way. And it's fun to watch him in that construction scene fight initially, problem solve using the tools he has. And that's what I enjoy doing as a director, because every tool, everything has to be doubled. You have to create props. You have to create soft rubber props. You have to have safe cement powder you can hit another actor with. And that sort of problem solving and choreography, when it comes together, can create a fun and unexpected action sequence. The core story of A Working Man is Jason has a surrogate family, and their daughter Jenny gets abducted. Arianna Rivas plays Jenny and does an incredible job in what could be a very difficult role to portray. You know, she's abducted, she's held captive. One thing we agreed on was that we didn't want to see Jenny disempowered. We didn't want to see her as a victim. We wanted to see her discover herself, discover who she is, to go on an actual journey. And one thing we agreed on is really she's more of a prisoner of war. She's a fighter. She's resisting. She comes from this strong family, and she's a strong person with all these goals in life. And, you know, when you look at survivors, when you look at people who overcome the worst situations thrown at them, they have that. They have belief. They have belief in themselves. They believe in their family. They know who they are. They have love in their hearts. They have something to live for. And I think that's very clear in Arianna's portrayal of this character. Is you root for her to escape, and you really believe she can. And Arianna's tough. You know, she can ride horses, she can fight, she can do all these things. And that was something that was very important in the casting, was having somebody that could believably survive and resist and maintain that will to succeed. And by the end of her journey, she's kind of rocking side by side with Jason, and they're doing some pretty interesting things together. There's kind of something for everybody. It's all the food groups, as I like to say. There's incredible action, there's great character, there's laughter, there's fun, there's humanity, there's inhumanity, there's great good guys, there's great bad guys. And I think it's important these days to give that experience to an audience, the well-rounded experience. It's really a bit of an homage to the films that I loved growing up on, the classic action movies that had some cleverness and life and smartness. It's a beautiful film to look at. It's well shot, it's well acted, it's well put together. It's a great action experience, but it's a great story. It's a great drama with characters we care about, and it's something everybody can watch. It's not made for one segment of the audience. It's made for the entire family, and it's almost its own genre. You could kind of call it a family revenge film.
Well, Levon is the main character and Mary is his daughter, and she is, so she lives with her grandpa, and her mum has passed away, and she's a bit sad about it, but she's not always like dwelling on it. And Levon has to go and fight some people who are don't like him and are quite bad. And then so I'm just staying with his friend and his friend's wife for a while, and then eventually he comes back and he's all been beaten up and stuff, but it's nice. We have quite a close relationship, me and the dad, so it's nice. It was so fun. He was really nice, and it's really funny because obviously he's playing my dad, and my dad took me to the first rehearsal, and they look really similar. So yeah, it was really funny, and my dad was very excited that they looked similar. It was really funny. Yeah, it was really helpful to watch how he does things and how he performs and what he does behind the scenes. So that was really cool to see and learn from and take some notes and apply it to myself. Yeah, I didn't really do too much with him, but it was really nice what I did, and he was very friendly, and it's really fun, like the scenes, because a lot of the scenes that I did with him, we did lines that weren't actually set, so we were just improvising, and that was really fun to do with him because it was just like a normal conversation. It was nice. He's really nice and funny, and it was always good. Like, he often says, like, I don't want to rehearse it too much because I want you to put your own, like, for it to be real. So that was nice because I could almost put my own interpretation on it a lot of the time. So that was fun, and yeah, it was really nice to work with him. I'm hoping that they will enjoy, like, the action part of it, and well, I'd like them to enjoy all of it, but like, I'd like them to enjoy the action and the scenes where, like, a meaning is, like, being portrayed, like the really meaningful scenes. Like, that would be nice for them to feel that too.
I'm sure what, how much of a character Dutch was going to be, because I only saw the sides, in the beginning. Then when I got the script, I was like, oh, Dutch is amazing. It's a G, and David was explaining to me how he's on this throne and this chair. I was trying to picture it, but it's more Game of Thrones type stuff. It's freaking amazing. So it's nice that Dutch has a solid character in this. Like, he has his own world in this whole thing. It's beautiful. Yeah, I'm enjoying the process, man. David is he has his hands in many things. I've worked with a few directors, and they just direct. David wants to do everything. He wants to do everything, and he's so chilled. He's so cool. He's like he's like one of the guys. What I mean? It's just it's interesting learning and working with him. Learning from him as well. He's one of the cool guys. For me, when he talked to me about Dutch, it was really just a regular conversation. He called me into his office and said, "Oh, we just want to talk about the character." And we talked for about half an hour, breaking down everything, and I felt it was nice. It was something that I haven't really experienced with other directors. It's usually quick, couple minutes, what I mean. But David wanted to chill and hang out and actually dive into who the character was, who the character is, and even on set, when the lines are just guidelines, really. He throws in, "Oh, Chidi, say this. Oh, Chidi, say that." Some words I mess up in, and I remember there's a part where I said scanty, and he's like, "Escante," because it's a Mexican thing. I don't even know what a Mexican thing is, like escante, So yeah, it's freaking cool, man. So as soon as I met Jason, he was like, "Hey, how you doing? What's going on?" It was so cool. Like, "Where you from?" He's a very nice guy, very friendly guy, and after watching most of his movies, especially starting from Snatch, all the way to now, all the way to Beekeeper, it's great sharing a set with Jason. Yeah. It's been great. I enjoy the training because I came from a basketball background, so I'm used to 4 or 5 hours practice every single day. So the fact that they were calling me in 5 days a week, every week, for the past month and a half to come train, I was like, yes. Bring me in, I'm ready. I don't care if my body's sore, my back is hurting, my knee is hurting, I'm coming in. So it was great training with the stunt guys, and I've worked with them before. A few of the guys I worked with in the last film I was on. So it was nice seeing familiar faces again. And yeah, it is pretty physical. In the final fight scene, the thing is that they give you so much, so much, in your arsenal. Then, of course, when you're finally filming, you're only doing about 20%. But I've got all this skill that I can use and take away, but even though I'm just going to use this much. So it's great. I'm learning so much, as in most, every job I'm on, I like that I'm learning a new skill, new fight skill, new whatever, it's beautiful. Visually entertaining, it's funnier than I thought. Because in the script, it just seems like a direct action film. But the characters are not what you think. Like, even Dutch, in reading Dutch, I'm like, okay, this is what I get from Dutch. In the end, it's not, it's not who I thought Dutch was. It's totally different. So I think people are going to see something different from a typical action film. There's some comedy there. There's some sadness in there. And of course, it's going to be visually entertaining. It's David Ayer, so yeah, it's going to be great.
It reminded me of Taken, so I thought we needed to put a little more of a kind of twist to the story. I think we wanted to modernize the girl's performance to give her agency and not be the victim, to be the opposite of what Taken was. So I thought that was needed. And then, of course, David was going to ramp up the action because of Jason and ramp up the specific dialogue that David's so good at writing. So when we get projects like this, it's for both of us, him to direct and write and for me to produce. We just finished The Beekeeper with Jason, so he was very happy with the experience and wanted to kind of do it again quickly. It's more of an action thriller. I think there's layers to the story in which Levon's character, Jason's character Levon, has to figure out where the head of the snake is and how to find her. And I think he's the pressure of knowing he has his own daughter that he's dealing with a custody battle for, and also feeling bad for the family because I think the Garcias really implore him to help them, and he gets an emotional attachment to the family because he knows them. All of that was inputted from David. I think David does a really good job of telling the Mexican-American story because he has 4 Mexican children. He lived in Mexico for a long time. He grew up in an all-Mexican neighborhood. So he really does dial it in correctly and doesn't use the same tropes as a lot of different writers do. I think he does a really good job of the authenticity, and it really shines when you have Latino actors in the film because they feel at home with the way their character's being written. Levon Cade is an individual who has a military background. His wife has committed suicide, and he's lost custody of his daughter to her grandfather. So he's going through a very tumultuous time with her. A lot of the guys who are in the military have an enormous amount of PTSD, TBI injuries. So I think he's kind of battling a lot of his demons and trying to restart his life. He's working for a very nice family called the Garcia family doing construction. And unfortunately, his daughter goes out with a night out with the friends and gets abducted. And he's asked to help them because of his military background and his expertise. And he struggles with that, and he struggles with what it would be like if it was his daughter. So you jumpstart from there, and then you have different parallel paths of how he's going to accomplish this goal of finding her. He was excited to have a range of emotions in this. Usually, some of these characters are very one-dimensional, and with this character, you see a range of happy, sad, emotional Jason, giggling Jason. Like, you rarely see that character projected, and I think he was excited for that as well. And David really likes shooting with him. He's an enormous, he's a complete gentleman. He's enormously, collaborative. He works very hard on the stunts. He could have been a stuntman or a stunt coordinator himself or a fight coordinator. He's done so many big movies in the stunt world that we kind of lean on him to get his expertise and what he thinks. Eddie Fernandez and Guillermo Grispo are working with him, and they absolutely mind meld on what they think is the most authentic way to produce a fight. I think he kind of knows the routine with David. David's really hands-on, man, and David mans his own camera sometimes. David is very much improvisational with lines. He'll throw lines at Jason. A lot of actors don't like going off book, but with Jason, he kind of trusts David that whatever he's telling him to say is going to be, germane to the storyline, and it's going to work. So I think that makes it much easier to direct an individual. And then he's great on set. He does, he's very gracious. He knows everyone's name. He's an easy guy to get along with. And when you shoot a movie like this, you're with each other for 15 hours a day for 10 weeks. It's a long time, so you better all get along. So that's the key for us. He just has a knack for knowing how a fight should be choreographed. He kind of reminds me of what everybody says about Tom Cruise, who does all his own stunts and should be could be the #1 stunt person in America. But I think Jason is really fascinating because I rarely see us use his double. And his stunt double is a great guy, Tom, but he usually is right in the middle of it saying, hey, I want to hit this way. He's working with Eddie Fernandez and Guillermo Grispo, kind of figuring out what's the best angles. He knows camera angles. He knows where to look. It's kind of like watching a masterclass in stunts.
Yeah, I started in the comic book business,
almost 40 years ago. I never really wanted to do anything else. Lucky enough to do what I love. I worked. I was 11 years on Batman. I'm considered one of the seminal writers on The Punisher. But I've written all kinds of comics. I've written The Simpsons. I've written SpongeBob SquarePants. I've written Conan the Barbarian, G.I. Joe, and obviously writing thousands of comic scripts. You sort of hone your writing craft and to make yourself a better writer. And largely, a lot of my comic work, especially The Punisher, informs my work with the Levon Cade character, because I really enjoyed writing The Punisher. I like that vigilante justice genre. And when I no longer wrote The Punisher, I kind of wanted to still scratch that itch. And so I created Levon Cade. Yeah, I wanted a guy who, was, good at this, good at basically death dealing. He was, one of the rough men that we count on, to go to horrible places and do horrible things to bad people to keep us free. And I wanted to very much make him that kind of character, where he had all these skill sets that he learned, firsthand in the most harsh environments. So this guy's a survivor. He's a, alpha male. He is a predator. You always want to create a character that's relatable. And I always like what I call the slob hero. The guy who's just like a normal guy that anybody, you might meet him, at work, he might be in line in front of you at Target and you don't know what this guy's all about. But I wanted him to be that kind of character where, he's not out to save the world or anything else. He's not seeking glory. He's not, in fact, Levon Cade is trying to forget his past by basically just getting a regular job and just being a regular guy, getting a paycheck and going home. But, like they used to say in the old Westerns, there's some things a man can't walk around, and his nature comes out when he's challenged with any kind of violent situation, or he sees an injustice, or he sees somebody, being mistreated. He's not going to take video of it with his phone. He's going to step in and do something. I think I was on like the fourth novel, and I sent him copies, and he read them. You send this stuff out, you never expect anybody to read it, and Sly read them and really liked them, and immediately got back to me and said, could we do something with this character? And of course, who better than Sylvester Stallone? Well, I mean, obviously he's got the physicality, he's got the chops through the fight scenes, he's believable. He's got a lot of gravitas on screen. The audiences love him. I love him. I think he's terrific. And the added bonus is he can actually act. So he's not just, an on-screen tough guy. He can do the whole emotional range and everything else. He does an awful lot. Jason Statham does an awful lot with these restrained performances, where he draws you in, and he says so much without saying anything. And that's really what the Levon Cade character needed. He's not a real talkative guy. It's about what he does, not what he says. As far as the action in the film and seeing it translated from the written page to the screen, it's a little trippy to see something that I thought of and wrote down actually turned into a full-blown, action set piece. And, and there's quite a few scenes in the movie that I immediately recognized. Watching it with my oldest son, I was like, yeah, that's mine. That's mine. That's mine. Because you don't expect everything to be translated to the screen. It's a different medium than a prose novel. I mean, I expect, there's going to be some changes made, but I was very, very happy to see some of the set pieces that I created. And, when I'm, coming from a comic book background, it's all about action set pieces and constructing and building these things. And to see it, in motion with stunt actors and all the rest of it, and hell, it's Jason Statham, fighting the fight that I thought of in my head. That's just awesome. Yeah, it was important for me that he have some sort of relationships, both with the Garcia family, the people that he works for, and it's obvious he's not just an employee. and then his own daughter Mary. It was important for me to have those elements in the story because, I didn't want to write about a vigilante character who was like a tortured loner, because that gets a little tired, especially when there's no real stakes in the story for that character. But he's got real stakes. There are real threats to people that he loves, and he's got people to come back to, and people who care about him, and wonder where he is. And then that was a really important part of creating Levon Cade, is that he has people in his life he cares about. Well, I mean, that's another aspect of Jason Statham, is that he can be the toughest guy in the world, but then also a bit of a softie on screen, and it's believable. And I got to tell you, I'm perfectly honest. The casting choice that gave me the most worries was casting Mary. When they cast her, I was like, okay, we're good. And I looked at her background and I thought, wow, this young woman is an amazing actress with an incredible track record. And I was very happy with it, and very, very happy with her performance on screen, and the chemistry between her and Jason was just spot on. It's probably in a movie that made me happy for a lot of reasons. That's the thing that made me the happiest was her casting, and I just think she did a terrific job. Michael Peña was another cast member. I'm like, it's like, you have this Christmas wish of who you want to have in a movie. And when I saw Michael Peña's name, I was like, oh, I love that guy's stuff. I've enjoyed every role he's ever played. So I was real happy to see him as part of the cast. Yeah, Levon is kind of a superhero in the way that Batman is a superhero. I mean, Batman is a self-made man. He doesn't have superpowers. It's all up to him. He's got nothing to rely on but himself. And so Levon is sort of that. And he's former special forces. And, if you've ever met one of these guys or see what they go through, these guys are superheroes. I couldn't do what they do. It's just amazing what the brutality of the training, just the punishment they take to get into the kind of condition they need to be hunter killers. And I think Levon very much is a real world superhero. Well, as far as the translation to film and audience reaction, I think we all have these things we love. We read as a comic book or a book or whatever, and then you see it come to life, and that's pretty cool. I mean, you get to see what you saw in your head, interpreted for the big screen. And I know Levon fans will be happy with this because it's got all the elements of the book, they're on the big screen with actors and sound effects and music and all the rest of it. So it kind of brings it to life even more. And I know they'll dig it. Yeah, very much part of the Levon Cade series is uncovering, layers and more sinister strata beneath what you can see in the world. We all walk around in the world, and I think we're aware of these things happen, but we don't know it when we see it. And so his thing about human trafficking is, he realizes how deep it goes, how extensive it is. And as we read the headlines and hear more and more news, we realize this is a grave problem, and it's sadly an everyday problem, not only in the United States but all around the world. And Levon Cade readers know that as the series goes on, he becomes more and more basically an enemy of anybody who traffics people. Basically, anybody who engages in slavery, which is what it amounts to. I mean, getting to work with Sly on this in pre-production and everything else, I thought, well, nothing gets more amazing than that. And then we cast Jason Statham, a favorite of mine. And then they bring on David Ayer, who's directed some of my favorite movies over the last 20 years. And I thought, well, I'm in really good shape here as far as professionals who know how to put together a kick-ass action film. So, yeah, I mean, and then, it's all come real as opposed to the trailer. I'm kind of a guy that wants to wait and see results. I never start spending the money before I get it. You know what I mean? And now it's real. It's really, really real. It's got a release date. It's coming out, and people know about it. Millions of people have watched the trailer, and it's already got good buzz. So yeah, this is exciting. Part of me can't get my head around it, but the other part of me is very excited.
What I enjoy working with David Ayer is just his artistry and depth. He knows how to work with actors. He knows how to make it a space where it feels so exploratory. It doesn't feel like you're making a film, which is great because you forget about the cameras, and then it's just captured, and he gets to the root of the story with you, and you just get to really find yourself in your character. You get to really find it and really present a story to the world that feels like it came from the soul, and that's always what I've seen from working with him these handful of times. Carla Garcia is a pillar of strength for the Garcia family, for the movie. She's the perfectionist boss lady that is in the house, that is incredible executive of all functions. And so we see her at the top, where you see just a familiarity of the family vibes, the closeness of Mexican families working together, and you really see the love between, husband and wife, and then mother to daughter, and even Abuelita gets in on the action. Working with Jason has been so fun. I really like that here. I feel like I see a smile more than I've ever seen it before. We were having a really fun scene, and he just boomed right into the room. Was like, that was so great. Like, he was like ready to get into it, and was so generous with his time afterwards when we just were chatting with him and Michael, behind the scenes, and it was really nice. I don't get to see him in action as much because obviously it's a lot more loving for me as Carla, but it's really nice to see Jason in this light. Working with Michael Peña has been a blessing. It has been a dream. It was something that I really hoped to do in my career, and suddenly I'm looking at him and working with him, and his approach is incredible. He has a week here because he's a busy man, and he's been really generous and really collaborative with me on, like, hey, I was thinking this for this scene, or, super animated, really funny, really fun, and just a powerhouse of talent. And I'm like a sponge learning everything I can from him, but it's been really cool to see that he's been willing to be as exploratory as David, so it just makes sense that him and David have worked together so many times. And then I can see him as an actor and what he does to just do what he does. He's so talented, yeah. She's a beast. She really is, and not only when it comes to fighting or choreography or stunt work, but also in general when it comes to craft and questions she's asking herself, and very willing and curious. It's inspiring to kind of go back to my younger self and realize where I can work on myself now, and I don't have to go back in time, but I can now approach it in Arianna's eyes, The Garcias trust Levon because you get to a certain closeness, especially with Mexican families or Latino families, where you are a part of the family, and you really, they might say blood is thicker than water, but actually, in a lot of ways, you're almost closer to the people that show up for you, and Levon is so reliable and loving in his own stoic way that we know that we can count on him, and that he loves us as much as we love him, and so we know that he's the man for the job to obviously take such great care of the company that we hold so dear, that has helped us in so many ways, but especially to do this task, we know we can be vulnerable with him because he's seen it, he's been around. Audiences can look forward to a great cinematic experience. I mean, the camera that David has with this is they're not using this camera anymore. So to see that on film, and to see it especially in an action movie with Jason Statham, with Michael Peña, with all these amazing actors, with a great action film and story that really has an onus of heart, family at the core of it, of the underlying iceberg there. It's just something that like really makes you want to sit there and watch it and enjoy the ride.